following podcast contains spoilers, an adult language, and oh my God, look out behind you, Francesca!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
This week, we're going to be discussing the season 1 finale of Dune Prophecy. Title of the episode is The High-Handed Enemy. And when we talked last week, Steve, you went first to talk about the episode itself, so I'll go first. I just realized before we started recording, we didn't even talk about how we felt about the episode. We
That's right.
Did a little texting on it. We talked for like 20 minutes and we didn't even talk about the episode, so we failed.
Right. Well,
But
there was a major holiday in between when we were last recorded, so there's a little bit of other things we were talking about.
It's
Okay,
true,
I'm just
it's
gonna
true.
throw it out there.
Yeah, there was a lot of recapping that had nothing to do with Dune.
There were cookies and T-shirts and things that needed to be discussed.
Yeah, exactly. Cookies and T-shirts, oh my. Season finale. So what a great episode. There was so much action, so much more like intrigue and things like that, and unexpected deaths and lots of unexpected things, and just everything that you would really want from a season finale. And it did a really good job of, I guess they had announced a couple of days, like just a couple days right before the season finale aired. I think it was on Friday or something, that that they had renewed for a season 2, but they didn't know that when they did this episode. And I think they did a really great job of, they didn't wrap up anything, but you could sort of look at it as like sort of a, I mean, it didn't end like neatly tied up in nice little bows in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have ended it. I mean, there'd still be some questions and some what's going to happen next, but you could have ended it if they had to. But I really like that, some things, like some smaller plot things, were handled, but there's a lot of like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens next. So I'm very excited that they're going to have a season 2. I would assume with the amount of production values that are in this, we're not going to see it until at least 2026, probably. And that's being generous. But yeah,
maybe late next year, like November, October, December, maybe.
Because maybe they have some stuff already, filmed that they want to,
or they're already starting, principal photography or something, and they've got enough time. I don't know, but you're right. Most likely, it's going to be one of those HBO series where there are multiple years between seasons. So but either way, very satisfying season finale. Like I said, with all the things you're looking for, the things left a little open, questions, edge of your seat moments, oh my God, I can't believe that happened moments. Just really, really, really well done. How about you? What did you think of the season finale? Yes, it's very, very similar. I think that you could tell that it was the end of the season, just the way a lot of the storylines, in some cases, just abruptly ended. And yes, Mark Strong, I'm looking in your direction. But I think if this had been all we had gotten, I would have been upset because I wanted more. I wanted to find out how all of this leads to little Timmy Chalamet running around. 10,000 years from now. But it was still very satisfying. And again, like we've talked about already, the palace intrigue and and all of the plotting and scheming that all of these different people were doing was just, just amazing to watch and to soak in. And this episode just had it in spades, right? I mean, everybody's playing their cards and making their moves, and we're going to do this, and then this is going to happen, and then we're going to do that, and then the other group is doing the exact same thing. And so it was very entertaining, and like you said, there was just enough action in it to keep it all moving along, and there was so much sort of, oh, that's what that means. Oh, that's what that's about. Oh, okay. Yeah. Now I, like for you, I had a moment I thought, oh, Diana's gonna be so happy when they finally explain what the two eyeballs are. Yeah. That we all the girls have been dreaming about. I'm like, okay, all right, good. Now we know, and so yeah. So there were a lot of moments like that. So overall, I thought it was really good. I don't know if I would say it was the best episode of the season, but it was certainly a good episode. And I don't think there was really a bad episode in any of the 6, but I enjoyed it immensely. I really did. So
yeah, agreed. And I agree with you too. I would not call it the best of the 6, but I like you said, it's really difficult to point out like anything that was bad out of any of the episodes. I think there was just like, they couldn't quite have the reveals of, they couldn't have quite as many crazy reveals, quite as many things as some of the other episodes, because they had to make sure that they sort of came to at least a definite end in some areas to make sure, just in case they didn't get that renewal. So, but still, if this is, not your best episode of the season and it's still as good as it was, then they're in good shape for their next season for sure. So before we get into talking about our individual points for episode 6, the season finale, let's talk first the description for the episode, and then we'll jump right into the writers and the director. So Steve, go for it, please.
Oh, very well. All right. So this is episode 1.6 of Dune Prophecy, and the title, as you told us, is The High-Handed Enemy. And the description, as sparse as usual, is as follows. As Tula contends with his true identity, Valia's maneuvering leads her into an epic confrontation with an increasingly powerful Desmond. And I can confirm that those two things were part of this massive episode. So
yes. It's funny, if you go to the Wikipedia episode description, you read through it and I'm like, holy shit, all of this stuff happened in one episode. Like, this person did this. This person broke that person out of jail. This person stabbed this other person. Another person was stabbed. This person was, da-da-da-da. This person died. This person did that. Then they did this. Then this other person stabbed someone else. Then the other one stabbed someone. Then he stabbed himself. And then you're like, holy shit, this is one episode. And to be fair, it was actually, I didn't notice the first time around because I was so engrossed. But the second time around, I did notice, mostly because I was a little tired. I was like, how long is this episode? And it was 1 hour and 20 for the episode itself. So yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a longer episode. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think it was the longest one of the season. So
I think so too. You may be right there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so that's our episode description. Now let's move on to our writers and our director. And again, it's a pair of writers and a director. And the director is the same person who directed last week's episode. So that's
surprise.
And they did that a lot. But the difference here is that there were, for many of the episodes, there were like kind of paired up where the same writer or writers would write 2 episodes, and then usually the same director would direct those 2. But in this case, episode 5 and episode 6 were written by 2 separate teams of writers, which I thought was kind of interesting. So our 2 writers for this week are a gal named Elizabeth Padden and another gal named Suzanne Rubel, I want to say. I'm not sure. It's W-R-U, so I don't know. However it is, Suzanne, if I butchered it, I'm sorry.
I can't understand how would be butchering it, but
exactly. I don't know. And so Elizabeth Padden, and again, both of these are folks that have got some chops, got some credits out there. And she has written for a couple of shows that you probably have heard of. She's written for the series The Umbrella Academy. Mm-hmm. She's written for a show called Altered Carbon, which I think ran on Netflix. She wrote for a show called The Oath. And I found this very interesting. She was an executive story editor for a little show called The Walking Dead: The World Beyond.
Oh,
so how about season? That? I think she was for both seasons.
Oh,
so
okay.
Again, she was a story editor, so she didn't actually write, an episode herself, but she was probably in the writer's room and involved with sort of, the writer would turn in the episode and then like the group, the team in there would kind of whip it into shape kind of thing. But I thought that was really kind of cool. So,
zombie cred. Well done.
There you go. A little zombie universe connection. There you go.
Yeah.
And then Suzanne Rubel, she has written for, of course, Westworld, because there's a huge Westworld connection on this show. And then she also wrote for a series called Weird City. And she wrote for another series called The Outcast. So again, both of these women have, certainly been working in television in a writing capacity for a while. This is not their first rodeo, and I thought it showed. I thought this episode was very well written, and had some nice dialogue and some great lines. And like you said, so much happened. It's hard to believe that it was just one episode.
Yeah, we're going to probably be all over the place, too, because one scene's going to make us think of another, and then we're going to go back to sort of root around. And so, bear with us, people,
right.
As that's organized as we usually are.
Oh, yeah, which is not.
But that's a no. That's a no all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And then our director.
Yes.
Unless you want to skip it, which is totally
no, go for it.
Our director is the same director as last week, and it's this woman named Anna Forster. Mm-hmm. And like I said last week, a lot of TV directing credits. Westworld, no surprise. Jessica Jones, Outlander, Madam Secretary, Criminal Minds, and she also directed the feature film Underworld: Blood Wars, which is part of that Kate Beckinsale vampire in leather pants story. So, so again, someone that's, got a lot of work, is someone that's clearly a pro, and like we said, this episode moves along. It's got great pacing, and I thought she did a really bang up job with the direction. So,
agreed.
So that is your writers and your director.
Fantastic. So I made a note as soon as I started watching, because I always have the closed captioning on. And as soon as it went into like the show itself, the first thing that came up was closed captioning, and it said unsettling music playing. And I was like, okay, that says everything you need to know about this show, this series. I mean, unsettling music. I don't think there was ever a moment where there was happy music playing. Not a lot of happiness in this first season that you can sort of recall. Nothing very light at all. Everything was very dark and heavy. So unsettling music, I was like, yep, that's that should be like the the tagline. Dune, prophecy, unsettling music playing. Just like their subtitle,
That's right. I like it.
Yeah. So they flash back first to sort of where we were when around where we were in the last episode. We were sort of finding out about we just found out about Desmond's parentage, etc. So we get a little bit of a flashback to from a different perspective. It's exactly the same scene we've seen a couple of times, which is the Dorothea scene, but it's from the perspective of Tula and the girls who are watching from above. Because it's funny because when we very, very first see that scene, a couple of episodes ago, as soon as Dorothea stabs herself, the girls like come down those stairs like lightning fast. Well, now we know why. They were sort of like right there watching the whole time. And I had to make a note of it because it says everything about some of more of the details we get later when we see the full conspiracy. And it's a conspiracy that these 4 girls were a part of. And everything started with Valia saying the line because basically they needed to be able to say something that was truthful that they could get away with, because they can't lie to any of their sisters. They'll be found out. Dorothea ended her life by her own hand. Which not a lie.
Technically, that is correct.
And when she said that, you could see she's saying it. She got like a little look on her face. You know that it's like, this is the story we're going to go with. And if we word it exactly this way, it's not a lie. Right. And they won't be able to detect the truth. They may have their suspicions or their whatevers, but they won't be able to detect the truth out of that line, they may be able to detect that they are withholding, that they're not saying the full amount of what's happening, but they won't be able to pinpoint it, because that is a true line. Dorothea's life ended technically by her own hand.
Mm-hmm. So. It reminded me a lot of the moment in the first Dune movie when the 3 or 4 Harkonnen guys have Jessica and Chalamet's character, and they're gonna kill them, and they're in the ornithopter, and they're flying out into the desert, and one of them's like, I don't understand, why don't we just slit their throats right now? And the other one's like, well, if we ever go up against a truthsayer, if we just leave them here in the desert, we can say we didn't kill them.
Yes.
Even though they did, right, by leaving them out there without any protection or still suits.
But technically, they didn't die by their hand.
Yeah, we didn't kill them, so we can say that, and that way we won't get in trouble. We won't be, we can't be ratted out by the truthsayers going, no, they did it, So, but again, exact same idea, right? Exact same thing, where it's like, yeah, technically we're being truthful, but there's a little more to that,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some layers here that we're leaving out, but whatever. It's no big deal. So
yeah. Yeah.
And then you and I both had some notes here about the scene we sort of pivot to after that. And that's Tula working with Nazir, who is she's a doctor. And she's got that imperial conditioning thing, like Dr. Yui has, and I'm hoping that we'll get some more information on them, like how did their society come to, you know what I mean? Like maybe at some point, could somebody do a little exposition and give us some background on the doctors? Because she carries herself almost like she also maybe was a sister. Like maybe that's where she started from.
Yeah, she clearly is a sister. I got that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then went on to this other calling or whatever. So Nazir and Tula have this great scene where they're sort of come to grips with what the virus really is. And it feeds off of fear. So if you can control your fear, you could control the virus. And they had this whole conversation about how they could put together an antidote and blah, blah, blah. And Tula's like, great, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. And Nazir was like, I'm the doctor. I'm qualified. Pretty much like, it's going to be dangerous. Like, I should do it, Tula, And so Nazir does it. And it is such a visceral scene. Don't you agree? The way they filmed it. I mean, have you ever seen a scene like that where you literally had this sort of visual representation of what was overtaking her in those the little cubes that were next to them. You could sort of see this sort of physical representation of the virus like growing, and it was kind of black and bleak, and it was sort of overtaking as it was gaining strength. And it was just, it was kind of it was a difficult scene to watch. It was a really rough. And then of course she dies. She doesn't prevail, but it felt like she was gonna. Like, there was that moment she was sort of like, basically like, I've got it. I'm ahead of it. And then it like doubled down and just came out of nowhere. And she was just, you could tell like she's in pain. And like, what do you do? Like, you think about that logistically in the moment. If you're in pain, the only way you can it's such a weird cycle. The only way you can get out of the situation you're in where you're in pain is to have no fear of the pain, but you can't, like, you don't know where and how it's coming at you. So it's this sort of unknown factor, but you have to sort of have no fear about this thing that is so unknown, and you can't see it and you can't fight it. So, I mean, how horrifying, and for Tula to be there, like, watching the whole thing. And her reaction afterwards, because, she volunteered to do it. And Nazir was like, no, I'll do it. Just what are your thoughts? Like, how did you feel watching that scene?
Yeah, it was brutal. There's no doubt it was brutal. And you're right. The three cubes full of liquid and had kind of like almost like snow cubes, right? There were had sort of the white particles which represent like her healthy mind, soul, I don't know, and then it would slowly start to turn black when the virus was at, they kind of determined that the virus is dormant in everybody. And that it's activated within the fear center, and it feeds on, once you become afraid, that's what it kind of feeds off of and becomes stronger. And so she goes and kind of activates it and gets it to go from dormant to active, and then it turns black, like you said, and then the white starts turning black, and then she kind of, using her training and her techniques and everything, she's remaining calm and under control, and it starts turning back to mostly white. And then, like you said, it like suddenly comes back at her, and that's kind of at the beginning of the reveal of, it's clearly not like a biological thing, that it's obviously like an AI controlled thing, because it's moving so fast. It's moving way faster than Nazir can deal with, can analyze and deal with. And so that's kind of the beginning of the reveal that we ultimately get at the end, about, that someone else out there in the Imperium has a very, very powerful thinking machine that has created these kind of like nano thinking machines, which are, they can implant into your bloodstream or whatever. And how everybody got infected, we don't really know yet, but it's a thing. And yeah, just the moment when Nazir dies, right, and she sees the worm and kind of is going through all of those visuals that everybody that does it goes through, and then you see Tula, and she like literally like backs into the wall and like slides down into a pile on the floor, and she's just broken, that she's just crushed. She doesn't know what to do. Particularly because she's also figured out that it's her kid that is sort of
responsible,
right. And that doesn't Nazir even say, like, well, don't we just kill him and that'll stop it from working? Because he's the one that can activate it or control it. Because they're discussing it before she starts about, well, how is it that, it took the sister, like a whole day to finally succumb to it, Whereas the kid or the people in the throne room, they, you know, when he was in their presence, they died instantly or in minutes, right, very quickly. And you know, they kind of surmised, didn't they say that the sister, like, she always said that she, you know, could her whole life was full of you know, pain and fear and uncertainty, and she learned to like live and master it, and so she kind of had a tighter grip on it than most people or something, and that's probably what kept her alive as long as it did.
Right.
So anyway, there's a lot of talk there, and they're sort of explaining, giving us a little bit of what this thing is and how it works, and they you know, are starting to surmise how to fight it, and Nazir is like, yeah, I can do it, you know, and she does point out to Tula that it's extremely dangerous, right? And then of course when she dies, yeah, Tula is just broken now, because she's like, what do you do, you know?
Right.
And also, you know, how many allies does Tula and Valia have left? I mean, they're all dead or dying, right? I mean, it's
right.
There's not a lot.
They're
left.
running out of friends, right?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. You know, and I did think it was kind of ironic that, you know, Tula is left in charge of the school when Valia goes to Seleucus Secundus, and like as soon as she left, the whole school just goes to hell in a handbasket immediately.
Yeah, she just has no control over anything. Yeah.
No. And then ultimately she's just like, I have to go.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even tell anyone. She just leaves, right? Because then, you know, what's her name? Sister, is it Amelia? The older gal who.
Oh, Avila.
Avila, yeah.
Yeah.
She's like walking down the hallway talking to another sister, and she's like, yeah, she just left. She didn't bother to tell anyone or anything. And you know, the one acolyte, it kind of overhears that, and is like, oh, interesting, you know. So yeah. I thought that was just kind of amusing that, like, literally she had one job, which was to keep the school going, and she totally biffed it, you know.
She flunked.
You
get an F. As Trump would say, you fired.
Yeah, you fired.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God. Terrible. And I think did we both cover this in our next points? Yes. Mm-hmm. Dude. Not surprising that Inez would try and set Kieran free, but surprising that the Empress would take her into custody.
Yes.
Don't you think? Like, I just think, like, that just shows, like, how off the rails a little bit she's getting. Because she is a little off the rails right now.
The Empress or...
The Empress, yeah. She's lost control. She didn't really have a lot to begin with, but, you know, with Francesca there, she feels sort of like, you know, she's being treated like a second-class citizen in her own home and all of this. And, you know, and just in that moment, it was like this moment of power for her, which was funny because of your quote that you included there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the you know, she goes, the princess goes to break her out, and then mom shows up and is like, what are you doing? You know, and it's great because the princess goes, you always wanted me to come to you for help and guidance. She's like, well, here I am, help me. And her response is to arrest her.
She's like, I wish you'd come to me sooner. I'm like, no, I don't think that's the thing that a parent should say in that moment.
Exactly. Right. And so she, you know, the guards come and slap the cuffs on her, and Natalia, the Empress, goes, I wanted to teach you about power. Let this be a lesson. And I thought, that's a good line, you know. And again, how cold and ruthless is this woman that she's willing to, you know, lock up her daughter with, like, the rebels that tried to execute them all, that you would think means that she's going to be executed too, right? I mean, don't you think that Kieran is going to, I mean, they said they're going to make an example out of him. So don't you think he's going to die at some point? And now she's, I mean, it's just, that woman is definitely, like, nothing is going to stand in her way of the power she craves.
Yeah. And it's two things too. She's got she's looking for the power, but she's looking for some kind of like revenge or justice, and getting rid of the sisterhood would be a really good way to do that. In her case, it's personal, very personal. And I would wager to say that in Desmond's case, it's very similar, but he's couching it in a concern for the Empire kind of thing, just to get people on his side. But if you go all the way down to if it's not personal, why is he carrying the scrap of fabric around?
Right.
Which is clearly connected to him being abandoned by Tula. So it's like, there's clearly emotions in there for him as well. So, yeah. But, oh, man, I didn't even think about it that way that you just said, where, that's another sign of her falling as far as she's had, is that, her argument, she says to Inez, is, he tried to kill all of us. And yet what does she do? She slaps the cups on her daughter and puts her right next to the guy that tried to kill all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, why would you do that? I don't know. It just, the whole thing is so screwy. She's the character that I'm very interested in seeing how she progresses in season 2. What are the next steps for her? Will she actually have power?
Right. Is she going to claim the throne and, be because, obviously the succession would be the daughter. She's number one. And again, after that, who knows who the next person in line is? Is it the son, the half son? Is it go to the emperor? I mean, again, I don't know what other people are in there that are, would be next in line or whatever. But what is she going to claim? Is she going to claim that, well, the princess, she's involved in the conspiracy, so we're not going to put her on the throne, or
can't do that.
She's not ready, I'll be the steward that kind of oversees the empire until she grows up a little bit more and is ready to take the power, one of those kind of things. We don't know. You're right. And it's very interesting because she has clearly allied herself with Desmond, and kind of get the sense that she is not going to have nearly the squeamishness that the Emperor had to use him.
God, no. No.
She's gonna be like, well, this coffee's a little bit too cold, Sir Desmond, and that kind of thing. So I don't know. And also, is that going to put her on the track to be ousted? Is the rest of the Imperium going to be like, we have to get rid of her? She's too much of a bloodthirsty killjoy. I mean, we need somebody that's a little more even-handed. So I don't know. Like you said, I'm really interested in that because her character became one of the more interesting ones for this season for me.
Yeah, and I would say too, one of the interesting sort of angles to it is, she had that moment in the last episode where she kissed Desmond, and I don't want to add too many layers to him as a person, but he didn't seem interested in that. He didn't push her away in any way. You know what I mean?
Right.
He certainly welcomed it, but he didn't invite more, which would be a much more natural response to that moment. And he just acted unnaturally.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because she sort of added that layer herself. He did not ask for that layer. She put it there herself. Yeah. And I also noticed in some scenes previous to that she seemed to get a real sort of physical / sexual thrill out of the pain that he would do to people, what he would go through for, you know what I mean? She was,
very, very
she
cathartic.
Freaky. She's freaky. I'm curious, yes, I think that and I'm not sure how the Council of the Landsrad gets involved with things like that. Like, do you remove her, the Empress, if she is in power or whatever? But I would wager, like, she's a little off the rails regardless, behavior wise. But I think she's also emotionally, she's off the rails because of being pushed aside by, Yaviko.
Yeah,
but on top of it, she has this thing, she feels like she has this sort of physical connection with Desmond. And I don't think Desmond feels the same thing physically. I think he thinks he has an ally, but I think his perception of his relationship with the Empress is very different than what the Empress's perception of her relationship with Desmond is.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see that play out in season 2.
Yeah. Well, and so, some of Desmond's reaction could just be, survival, right? Because, I mean, this is like the Empress, okay? And, if the Emperor turns out to be a jealous guy,
he's dead.
Who's he going to punish? Is he going to punish his wife, or is he going to punish the dude that's sleeping with her? So at the same time, though, she's the Empress. You can't really say no.
Exactly. So there's that layer too.
So he's sort of like, oh, okay, you're gonna kiss me. Well, okay, I'm not gonna push you away, but I'm not doing anything else, just in case, right?
Yeah.
So in case if Haviko walked in right there and he's just like, see, I swear both of my hands are at my side,
Right.
So I think that might be a little bit, but you're right. He definitely is not reacting like what, and I hate to use the word normal in these kind of situations, but kind of like how we would expect someone to react.
Stereotypical response, yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, but I agree with you too that she clearly enjoys it when he's inflicting pain on other people, because it's just a way for her to she feels completely wronged. Right.
Yeah.
That, she, particularly with the Bene Gesserit or the Sisterhood, whatever they're being called now, replacing her. Like I think, always assumed that she was going to like rule the Imperium with him, and they were going to make decisions together. And clearly that ain't happening, and she feels very like cheated and slighted, and, someone stole this thing from her. Who is it? Oh, it's all of those women, and then you throw in Francesca, who, clearly very beautiful, sexy woman, clearly still has the Emperor wrapped around her little finger, clearly, he's going to drop everything to be with her. That's got to hurt her even more.
True. Yeah. She's a hurt woman, and we don't know what her motivations are these days. So it's like, does she want to cause pain, revenge? Does she want pleasure? Does she, it's difficult
all the
to
above.
tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. So she's going to be an interesting one to watch in the second season.
Remember, she told Desmond at the end of episode 5, let's, purge the Imperium of these witches.
Yeah.
So, there's very possible if she now is like, even if it's only temporarily running everything, there might be a pogrom or something instituted to just all of the sisterhood are, immediately kicked out of the houses, and, they're going to be arrested and thrown in prison and all this. Who knows, right? I mean, it's it certainly could be a form of the reckoning that, they've been trying to avoid, right? So
yeah, true.
Yeah.
But what's great is we went from this scene of a really, without really having a more descriptive way to put it, she's a cold-hearted bitch. And to take that and sort of pivot, and then we get this great scene with Valia, and it's Valia and Theodosia with Francesca, and they're talking through plans and what comes next, and basically have to kind of abandon it. It's interesting. The thing I like about this too is it's showcasing that Valia has a lot of power. She's smart. She's so cunning, but she's not omnipotent. She's she still is human and can fail because there's a part to the puzzle she doesn't see. And that's what she says. She's like, there's something we're missing. Yeah. Something's missing here, and we can't figure it out.
Yeah, there's a piece on the board that isn't come into view yet.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I think, too, the reason why this meeting happens is that a guard, the Emperor is, having, happy fun time with Francesca. And a guard shows up, and so the Emperor comes out of his bedchambers and is like, "What?" And the guard's like, "The Empress has arrested your daughter." Yeah. And so Francesca overhears that, and then she immediately goes to Valia and is sort of like, "You know what? Things are in motion. Things are happening at the palace." And so that's why Valia's like, "Oh, okay, whatever we were thinking of doing, that's out the window. Now we're going to
do
plan
something different."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's great because she's like, I mean, it's amazing. She doesn't hesitate at all. She's just like, okay, all this like coaxing and manipulating the Emperor, that's over.
Yeah. And it's interesting because they must have talked through for years what some of their plans would be, and if this didn't work, we would pivot to this other thing. And she immediately says, we're going to have to try a different tack. And she really doesn't say much, but Francesca knows kind of where they're going. She knows that it means that Carino is going to need to be, the Emperor's going to need to be sacrificed in order for the next portion of the plans to work. They'll have to sort of kick it into overdrive, as it were. So,
I like when she kind of pleads her case because she looks at Valia at one point and goes, "He's the father of my son."
Yeah.
And Valia's like, you knew that this day could come. It's just like, too bad. Thank you for playing.
It's so cold. And Francesca knows, like, she's part of that group. She knows that she has to fall in line. She agreed to be a part of all of these plans. And, oh, God, when she's like, it's the father of my son. And she's like, basically, without saying so, Valia's like, that doesn't matter. And you know that. Like, you knew.
I didn't write down this line, but I almost thought, like, the title of this episode could have been Sisterhood Above All.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of the when Valia gives you an order to do something you really don't want to do, that's the response you have to give her, is that Sisterhood Above All, I'll do it, So
it's the only way I can get this done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I did write down that line where they're, Valia is sort of basically saying, like you said, we have to change tactics, and we're going to have to meet this head on, and that means the Emperor's usefulness is over, so we have to get rid of him. And when she kind of protests a little, Valia goes, Carino has forfeited his right to live out his reign in peace.
She just like basically like she's terrible.
Well,
but in the best
eyes
way.
on the prize, funny. Man.
Yeah. She's very singularly focused.
Yes.
And I'm sure, like we were saying, like, they've been planning this for so long, and they had all of these what ifs in place. What if this happens this way, or this happens that way? So the idea of killing Carino to make sure that they could get Inez on the throne no matter what is just one of the things that they probably discussed at some point. So she's just like, okay, we're moving to this other tack, and she can't be emotionally connected to it.
Not at all. Yeah.
Which they don't have to worry about, because I don't think Valia is emotionally connected to anything except her rage.
her hatred of the Atreides, clearly she is connected to. Maybe a little bit with Tula, a little.
I was gonna say Dorothea, like she did a good job, being mad at Dorothea there.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, that's rough. But
I know you made a great point too, kind of tying that scene in with kind of jumping ahead 10,000 years to when the Bene Gesserit kind of write off the Duke.
Yep, because he's immaterial. The whole point is, because the original plan was for Jessica to have a daughter And the daughter was supposed to give birth to the Kwisatz Haderach by joining with a Harkonnen.
Yeah, and with what's his name? With the kid. With Fayed Ratha. Yeah. That was the plan.
That was the plan. And Jessica didn't follow the plan, and she had the son. So basically, they don't have to broker a wedding or a thing. They just have to try and get Paul in hand and Jessica in hand. So basically, Leto is irrelevant at this point. Yeah, and the line in the movie is, I can't remember if they said it the same way in the Villeneuve movie, but in the David Lynch one, the Reverend Mother says, "For the Father, nothing." And Paul hears it, and Jessica knows, and it's the same situation that Francesca's in.
Yeah.
Francesca has feelings and attachments to Haviko, and so did Jessica, is ridiculously attached to Leto. And so to know that to do your duty, your husband will probably have to die. Yeah. Duty. It's just, it just was such a great tie-in to all of that same, 10,000 years later, they're still doing the same damn thing.
Damn thing.
I know. They're trying so hard to get that super person in charge, but they, in the midst of it, they weren't expecting someone to be, and the same thing. Francesca is, I'm kind of jumping here, but Francesca, the only reason that she hesitates with the Emperor is because she has feelings for him.
Loves him, yeah.
And she has history with him, and he is the father of her son, and all of that is very emotional. They talk about the imprinting. What
if it works both ways?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can't not. That takes a lot to not be connected as well. That's a cold person who would have be able to do all of those things and have no feelings. Look at Tula. Tula got rid of her child, but clearly feels regret about that.
Oh, yeah.
So here's Valia, who has no emotions, surrounded by all these people who just keep screwing up because of their emotions.
They're emotional, yeah.
And without even knowing it, it sends Francesca to her death.
Right.
The Emperor dies, which was their plan, but Francesca does too.
Yeah, I was going to say, though, that you want to see how cold Valia is. Not only does she, basically say that the Emperor has to go, he's forfeited his life, but then she goes, oh, by the way, Francesca, you get to do the forfeiting.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, have I showed you my nifty little pointy thing here that you get to take with you? It's coated in poison, and you're going to love it.
You're going to love it. Just whatever you do, don't just, stick it in your own neck.
Or do what I wrote on my notes, which is my pro tip is when you have a poison pen with you and you've decided not to use it on the person that you love, don't just put it down willy-nilly for just anyone to pick up.
Anyone to come in and get. Yeah.
Yes. You can emotionally connect yourself to the fact that you don't want to kill, your lover, who is the father of your son and all of this other stuff. You can emotionally connect to that. That's fine. But keep your wits about you when it comes to the instrument of death. Could you put that away, please?
You're just asking to get it.
Yeah. And by the way, that advice is for the rest of the general audience, because clearly Francesca did not heed that advice.
No.
She just went blindly into there because of her heart. And it bit her in the butt, as it were.
Literally, bit her in the neck, literally.
Yes, yeah.
But what I like too, though, is that looked to me like that was the first appearance of the Gom Jabbar.
It does have a lot of quality. They didn't call it that. She called it something else. But there's so many things that resemble things that we see later.
Yes,
a group, a people, a practice, or whatever, and it resembles something we see later, but they call it something different now. So that could have been the beginning of it, Yeah,
it was super cool. And then neat little box, right, that they keep it in, and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But then, so already we've had all these kind of monumental things happening, and then it jumps to a flashback of Valia and her little group after Dorothea has died, right? Dorothea had her own little flock, and they're sort of like, still together and still trying to figure out what happened to Dorothea, and also, are we going to follow Valia as the Mother Superior? Right. Are we going to fight?
What's our next move? Yeah.
Yeah, and so Valia and her 3 acolytes, if you will, which is Tula and Francesca and I always forget her name.
Akasha.
Akasha, yeah. They come into like the cone of silence, right, where these girls are having this sort of little powwow, and Valia's like, okay, here's the deal. You guys have to decide right now. If we have to be united. We can't have this strife, okay? And Dorothea, she just couldn't handle it, so she took her own life. That's the story we're going with. And so you guys have to basically, either you're with us or against us. Pretty much is what she says, right?
Basically.
Yeah. And then one of the greatest scenes of the whole episode happens.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's this great I'm glad they showed this in other scenes where they can sort of create a cone of silence.
Yes.
And you can tell it's almost like a spotlight, like a downlight, using my theater terms, but there's this little pool of light, and within that pool of light it creates this, very literal cone of silence. So if you're outside of that light, you can't hear anything that's happening inside there, which is important.
I think it probably prevents like recording and things like that. So if you're under surveillance or something, the bugs or the electronic listening devices won't pick up anything.
Sure.
So
and let's say you have a really powerful AI computer down in your basement, won't hear a damn thing.
Let's say. For those of you out there that do. Yes.
Just a what if, as it were. And there's this great moment where all 4 of the girls are in this cone of silence, and they use the voice. They all use the voice. Mm-hmm. And basically they just ask all of the people in the group. They just choose. You have to choose. And
well, it's either it's you choose to be with us or to be with Dorothea.
Yes. And by the way, Dorothea, she gone.
She gone. She dead.
Yeah. So that's your choice. If you choose that, don't choose poorly, but you might not come back.
The great part is they use the voice, and again, they didn't tell them pull out your blade and stick it into your throat. Nope. They basically said, in your heart of hearts, you choose. Either you're going to follow us and do what we want, or you're going to remain loyal to Dorothea, in which case you're going to follow her. And oh my God, it's just slit throat after slit throat after slit. I mean, they're all just like, I don't like you. And they after about 30 seconds, and you're right, because all of them are going like, choose, and they're all doing it right. And it's incredible. And then almost all of them are dead, and then there's one person that's left, and she's like, I'll go with you.
And it's
Avila.
Avila. Yeah, I couldn't remember her name again.
Right, and she's a survivor. She's like, whatever's the winning side, that's the side I'm on.
Yeah, exactly. She's an undecided voter. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I haven't quite figured out who is the worst one of the two. I think what's interesting to me is during that scene, I was like, have you ever seen a season finale that didn't involve zombies or a horror element that had this much freaking death?
Oh, my God.
The body count in this episode, and yes, not all of it was in real time. Yes, this whole choose moment was in a flashback, but it's still there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And then how chilling is it when Valia then comes up to Avila and she goes, we can't share a whisper about what happened here.
Yes, you can't say a word.
Basically saying, you've hitched your wagon up to us now, and there's no going back. You know,
well, that's an easy one. You just saw what will happen if you breathe a word of what happened.
Yeah, right.
In this cone of silence, you know, you can't say a word, because if you do, this is all the stuff that will happen to you.
Yeah, it's going to be bad because you got a knife and we're going to make you use it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. An unbelievable scene. And also, I believe it's right out by the fountain or the pool where Dorothea died. I mean, it's in that same courtyard where they're doing that. So, yeah, I mean, that is definitely like the school courtyard of death right there. There's no way around it.
Yeah, there's probably, you know, if they hadn't buried them under all of that water, there probably would be a problem with like ghosts and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
I'm
surprised it isn't haunted.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and you think about it too, they have that ability to hear, like when they show like Tula and Valia, that they can hear their ancestors. It's all the people that have gone through the agony. They can still hear like an echo of their ancestors. That's part of being in the sisterhood. So you have to wonder, like, are they hearing them as well? Like, would they hear the voices in there? Like, hello, can you come and get us? We're underneath the water here.
Hello, need some help down here. Yeah,
it's a little dark.
And in like the intervening 30 years, like nobody has, you know, decided to jump into the pool and swim down to the bottom, right?
Yeah,
you know,
nobody. But I love how it's been such a centerpiece all of this season so far. There's been so many, like, you know, pivotal moments that have happened in that courtyard, and then, you know, the imagery in the dream, everything's very circular. It brings itself, you know, whether it's you know, they're drawing like the mouth of the worm and all this other stuff. Everything's got a very circular sort of feel to it, and then you get the pool, and you know, and that's definitely a big image for the whole season. You know, that whole thing.
Oh yeah.
I hadn't mentioned it before when we've because they've shown a flashback to the Dorothea suicide scene many times, but I love the attention to detail in this show that when Valia uses the voice, when she, you know, take out your blade, you know, stop, and then take out your blade. When she does the voice, the water ripples.
Yes.
From the sound wave, which I think that's a really great, like, attention to detail. And clearly, you know, the pool of water is there as a device. It's there because it's going to reveal something later. So, you know, they had to design the set so that pool was a major part of that room, but to incorporate it into it, you know, a lot of other shows would do that scene and wouldn't even think about having the sound affect the top of the water. But it happened with that. It did it with the, you know, the choose scene. It's just amazing. Such an amazing extra thing. So
I'm starting after this episode, I started to think about it, and I'm starting to think that, you know, the whole idea that the circle that we've been seeing in the nightmares and things, we always were like, it's the worm, it's the mouth of the worm.
Maybe.
I don't think it is. I think that was a total MacGuffin. I think that was the showrunners going, hey, you know what? All these crazy Dune fans, they're gonna think it's the worm.
Yeah.
And you know, they give us this the Desmond story. Yep. About getting eaten by the worm. But as we kind of said in the you know, episode 1 and 2 and 3 when we were talking about it, there's no way he got eaten by a worm. He'd be dead. There's no way, right? So clearly that didn't happen. He believes that it happened, but it didn't. And as we find out in this one, you know, clearly no, somebody grabbed him and, you know, did the Bionic Man thing to him.
Yeah.
So it all along, it's been the pool. All along, that's where the reckoning is coming from. And the reckoning also, it's not so much the reckoning against the sisterhood, it's the reckoning against the Harkonnen sisters. I mean, that's what's happening, because all of their secrets are coming out in plain sight, and on top of that, almost all of their allies are dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and think about it, their little circle, the 4 of them, 2 of them are dead now.
Yeah, it's just them. That's just
It's
the
just
sisters.
the
That's
sisters. And considering, like, I don't know, like, I think Tula puts up with her sister, but I think there's a lot of her that, like,
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. We haven't even gotten there, but yeah,
yeah,
Tula, yeah. I mean, when Tula, I think in that scene where we see Dorothea kill herself, and it's from Tula and the other two girls' perspective, and Valia is talking to her. Doesn't Tula like get sick and go throw up? And
I
then
mean, obviously
Valia's
because
like,
of the
oh,
pregnancy thing, but
yeah.
still, yeah.
But and when she says that, and then you remember Valia is like, oh my God, your son is going to be an amazing person, and we are going to raise him and teach him. And I mean, Tula's like terrified of that.
Yep.
So much so that she like fakes his death, right?
Yep.
And lies to Valia for 30 years that, oh yeah, my kid was a stillborn, and I don't have a kid. What are you talking about? I mean, so clearly not a lot of trust. And doesn't Valia say, you think I'm a monster?
Yeah.
As you're watching, you're like, yes, you are a monster. She's right. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm curious to see in the next season if they'll become more antagonistic towards each other.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it isn't.
I mean,
Tula's arrested, right?
Right, but the whole like thrust of the whole season is all based off of Desmond's revenge against the sisterhood and wanting to put them down.
Mm-hmm.
And he only feels that way because he was abandoned, and that wouldn't have happened if Tula trusted Valia as a sister and as a friend. Like, Valia is just out of control when she's younger. And so it's like it's Valia's fault ultimately that all of this happened. So I'm curious to see if they will be pitted against one another in the second season.
Yeah. I did like that moment where when Tula kind of reveals she's pregnant, and then she, Valia's like, well, we'll deal with it, and Tula's like, yeah, but the sisterhood, we separate mothers from their children, and Valia just goes, when I'm Mother Superior, we can do whatever I want.
Right. And if that's her first feeling, like if that's how she feels, like that means she's able to be bent into a certain position because of, it being what she, if something isn't going her way, she's not going to work with people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not for the good of the sisterhood. It's for the good of Valia.
Yes.
Ultimately,
absolutely.
and lots of times I'm sure those things were the same, but there's also plenty of times where they weren't.
Yeah. Oh man, so much. Right. And speaking of so much, your line is great. So much for Anna Rule.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is that we kind of get this, like, it's almost like ping pong where we're on this Wallach 9, we're back at the Imperial Palace, and we're seeing all of these events unfold because Valia goes back. The Emperor sends for her because he's reconsidered and doesn't want Desmond to be his Bashar anymore and wants the sisterhood to be back. And so he sends for her, and then there's that great scene where she's sitting on his throne. And he comes in and he's like, what are you doing? And she's reminding you of the correct order of things, and just cuts him down and basically tells him, we've controlled you your whole life, and every decision you've ever made, we made it way before you did, and then got you to do it. Just belittles him and emasculates him, and he's like, I need your help. I mean, he's genuinely you can help me get rid of Desmond, and then we can go back to the way it was before, and everything will be fine. And she's just too late, you're done. And so that story starts unfolding, and then on top of it, then we get Lila wakes up, and she is really Dorothea, but we don't really know that right away. And she gets Jen to loosen up her bonds, and then she gives her the sedative that they had, for her in case she got too unruly, and so she gets out, and then she goes and I can't remember the name of the acolyte, but the one of Jen and Lila's friends, I think it's the one that was talking about jumping the prince when he showed up in episode 1. She's like kind of like a Dorothea disciple.
Emmeline. That's her name. Yeah.
And she's sort of like gathered, because you have to remember at this point there's like no leadership at the sisterhood at all, because Tula leaves, Valia's been gone, and so a lot of these girls are just kind of like running around doing whatever. I guess. I mean, it's like there's nobody in charge, right? And so she's sort of rounded up a bunch of like-minded girls, and they're kind of reestablishing the kind of pious order that Dorothea had. And then of course out comes Lila, who is channeling Dorothea, and she kind of scoops them up, and she's like, we have to get the sisterhood back. She's like, where's sister this name and sister that name and sister the other name? And Emmeline's like, I remember reading about them, but I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And that's when the whole thing about the pool starts to unravel. And ultimately she drains the water, and there's like 20 skeletons.
It's amazing.
It is. It's incredible. But you really get the sense that Dorothea has now become Mother Superior.
Yes.
And she then leads all of them down into the catacombs where the thinking machine is. And I think the last scene we get of them is the thinking machine kind of boots up as it does when you walk into the room, and she like smashes it with like a crowbar or something.
I know.
And it all goes dark, and you're kind of like, oh, well, so much for that computer.
Yeah. That's the end of that.
Yeah. But
and it's a shame too, because like, we see at the beginning of the episode, there was this great scene where we get Tula using Anarule for what you would want an AI computer to assist you with, to search your entire database for an answer. So that's what she was doing when they were trying to find, like, how do we fight this virus, and she's asking all these pointed questions and getting, a computer that knows everything from the beginning of time is able to like search instantaneously and give you some feedback or some thoughts or whatever. And now they're in one fell swoop. They're smashing it to pieces.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I can't remember, is it Tula or is it Valia who, when someone questions, like, you're using a thinking machine, and she's like, it's a tool, and if you use it correctly, there's no danger, or something like that, right?
Yeah, I can't remember, but yes, it was one of them who sort of, got around the whole idea of using a thinking machine.
Mm-hmm. Which is really kind of ironic when we, the big reveal at the end is that, there is an unknown player out there that is also using a thinking machine to do all kinds of unspeakable things, which we'll get to, which is the Desmond reveal at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of get it's these scenes are like right one on top of another. We get the choose kill all of Dorothea's followers scene. Then we jump back and we get Haviko and Francesca, and Haviko is like, he's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I talked to Valia and she was really mean to me. And he's like, was all of it a lie? And, all of that kind of, when you've kind of caught your SO in a lie and you're questioning the whole relationship, that whole thing is happening. And I wrote down this line. I thought it was really cool, where Haviko kind of realizes that he has just been a pawn this whole time, and no free will at all. And he says something like, it's a strange thing when you finally realize you've never known one true moment of freedom. And then he goes, but I can control this. And he just like Harry Carries himself. And puts his dagger right into his, abdomen, right? And it's just, and then of course at that point, Francesca, all thoughts of poisoning him was out the window, and she's like, ah! So she's comforting him, and while she's comforting him, she doesn't realize that the Empress has come into the, the royal chambers there, and she just picks up that pen and just ever so slightly taps her in the neck with it, and Francesca, yep. Francesca dies in like 3 seconds.
Yep.
Just boom, dead, and then the Empress then like starts screaming, for the guards, like, the Emperor's been killed, and so it's almost like she's gonna blame Francesca for it.
Oh God, yeah, and then use that as a tool.
Right.
To help bring down the sisterhood.
Yeah. But these scenes are happening one on top of another. So you're like, oh my God. Yeah, it's keep building and building and building. It's unbelievable. And then I think the next scene is the prison break, right? Yes. Where they bust out the princess, and she's like, I'm not going without the swordmaster guy. So he has to come with them, and then Theodosia shows up and is going to do her shapeshiftery thing to buy him some time. And
fantastic.
And this is kind of where it goes into more action mode, I think, for the episode, right? Where now pieces are in motion, and they're trying to make their escape, and of course Desmond and the guards are trying to stop them, and it becomes, I thought the pacing really picked up at that moment.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of powered through for and there's still like 30 minutes left in the episode too. It's not like this is like the very end. There's still a ton more shit that has to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic that I loved that scene, and Theodosia, who it's funny how she resisted it before, to do the shape-shifting thing. And I wonder too if the whole, seeing her brother, like, that was a lot more personal, whereas this is, she can absolutely say that getting Inez out of there furthers their mission of, you know what I mean? She doesn't know what the brother thing would have done, you know what I mean? Like, that's not really, it was sort of like a side mission or whatever. Yeah. This is directly connected. You do not hear any complaining or anything about her pain. She's there, she's ready, she's in. And it's great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, she comes in, right. And as soon as she like takes the hood back, and you're like, oh, there are 2 princesses now, Yeah. And clearly she's going to stay behind and kind of buy them some time, try and, confuse the guards. And so I think they swap outfits. So she's actually wearing Inez's clothes, and so then they leave. And then as soon as they leave, she sees like the dead guard on the ground there, and she like gets a different idea, and she's like, I just thought of something even better. And so and I didn't write this down, but there's this great moment where Desmond is in his office, and and I think he's talking to the Empress, and the guard walks in, and he's like letting him know that Valia has been arrested. And he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, the Emperor sent for her, and then he arrested her, and she's now down with the other prisoners. And he's like, of course she is. And he immediately knows that, oh, this is terrible,
Yeah. And it's so funny because the other guards or whatever, they don't make that leap. And he immediately is like, of course she's here. Of course she wanted to get arrested so she could be down in there and be able to have access to those 2.
And it's great too, because when they first walk in with her, as soon as they get inside the door, she's like, she uses the voice and goes, untie me. And so he takes off her cuffs, and then she's like, defend me, and because the other guards show up, and they end up killing each other. It's so great. She's physically, Emily Watson is not a powerful, like, I'm going to beat you up or use my incredible fighting skills to kill you. But she has the utmost confidence because she's got that voice, and she knows, unless you're Desmond Hart, you're going to do whatever the hell I tell you to do.
Yeah.
And it's great, and it's a wonderful like jailbreak scene, the way they do it, and they get out, and then they make their run for it, and as soon as Desmond finds out that she's in there, he's like, lock down the palace, don't let anybody leave. It's just like, this is bad, and of course then I think that's when the Empress, then she goes and finds the Emperor and Francesca, and that moment happens. So so again, all this actiony stuff is happening all at once. It's great. It was just really fun, entertaining television.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because there's also this great moment with I can't remember where it was placed, but we get finally an answer on what the shiny marble thing was.
Yes, the marble thing. Yeah, it's way at the end. It's after almost everything has happened, and they've left the planet, and they're gone. And I always blank on his name. What is his
Harrow.
Harrow or Hammond or something.
Yeah, I think it's Harrow. Yeah.
He comes back to the house where he told Valia, you make this your own, because he had business to attend to on the whale planet. And so he comes back, and he comes in, and he goes up to that weird kind of whale like painting sculpture thing.
Yeah, the sculpture thing that we pointed out before.
Yeah. And and you get this shot, and it's like looking like from the sculpture's perspective out into the room, and it has kind of a weird like greenish glow to it, and then and when he talks, because he comes in and he's like, Valia, are you here? And like his voice sounds a little distorted and stuff, and then he comes up to it and he grabs it, and it kind of like does like an abyss water tentacle kind of a thing, and it oozes out of the rectangular shape of this sculpture back into the marble thing. And he puts it back in its little container, and then it like turns into a hologram, and we find out that it's like a bug, and it like has been recording anything that happened in that room. And he's watching Valia and Francesca and Theodosia discuss their plans from the earlier scene, and he kind of has that laugh going.
Now I have you.
Well, and you just wonder, is he gonna rat her out, like Desmond Hart wants him to,
or because is he gonna play it and say, look, I could rat you out. What are you gonna do for me?
Right. So again,
that's possible too, because we've already seen that he's played both sides.
Yeah. So, but it was so cool. I'm like, oh, they answered that question. This is so not lost.
I know. It's true. There was a cold weather environment, so you could assume that there was probably a polar bear, though.
That's very true. But yeah, what did you think about that reveal? Did that work for you, or were you like, oh, that's all it is?
I liked it because, I like when something that happens and it almost makes us look kind of dumb. Not dumb, but like, we were like, ooh, is it some kind of like drug, or is it like, is it a sparkly version of the spice or something? Dude, it's a camera, which means he literally handed him a machine. He handed him a thinking machine. So now if you know what it is, and he knows what it is, because he didn't say anything at the time. He knew what it was, though, when he handed it to him. But what's funny is, if you go back to his reaction and you think about, like, he was excited to have Desmond give him this fancy, shiny, beautiful, so elaborate thinking machine. Mm-hmm. And it was for him. And that's like, that's pretty amazing. And you think about it, and it probably mirrors what's in his eye. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably, I wonder if it even matters if he says anything. I wonder if it just has a direct connection to his brain. That would be interesting.
That's a real good question. Yeah, again, they just kind of tease us about what Desmond really is. And so we don't know his capabilities. We don't really know for sure what he can and can't do, which is it makes him even that more cool, because maybe we just scratched the surface with what he can do, right? But that scene with Harkonnen or Hammond or whatever his name was really great, because it's literally like, what, 30 seconds?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very small, tiny little scene, but it's so great because, and again, not a big expo dumpy scene, right? It's not him explaining anything. It's just him comes in, grabs the bug, starts looking at the footage, and is like, oh, and you're like, oh, I get it now. It's so cool. So I was really happy that they did that, because I thought for sure that was going to be we'll answer that in season 2.
Yeah. You're and the thing is that honestly, this is gonna sound terrible, I'd forgotten all about that, because to me it was such a tiny, like I was interested in knowing what it was, but there's so much other like intrigue and you're finding out that he's the child of Tula. Like there is so many like earth-shattering kind of stuff happening that to me, this little cool thing, yes, it would have been interesting, but I had honestly, not gonna lie, completely forgotten about it until he pulled it out, and I was like, that's interesting.
Well, and like you said, by this point, the body count in this episode is like up to like 30. So many earth-shattering things have happened. The fact that they also took a moment to answer this very, very small question was great. So absolutely. And it's crazy too, because all of those, like you said, this happened at like the very end of the episode, and you're like, okay, great. Is this little thing gonna explode and it's gonna kill him because the body count for the episode is so high? Like that's all you're thinking about is, ooh, one more death. Like, what is happening here? So yeah, it was a cool reveal. It was one I was not expecting or even hoping for, like you were. Like I said, it was just not even in my brainstem for that. We got to talk a little bit about while they're trying to get away from Salusa Secundus, and they're down in the they're in like a back entrance area to the, they're trying to get to a ship so that they can get off planet, right? Yeah, like at the starport or something.
Yeah. And Kieran and Inez and Valia are trying to get to a transport, and Valia, they see that Desmond is onto them, and he's come, and they can see there's a group of them trying to get near them. And in her mind, those two, like Inez mostly, she could care less about Kieran, but Kieran can help keep her safe without her there. So she's just like, you guys go. I need to go take care of this. And she has this great scene with Desmond, and Tula's there too. Tula shows up, and just this great moment of, he activates the virus and she fights it.
Yeah.
Mostly because I think she is a sociopath.
Well, of course.
She has no fear center. So that's why it doesn't affect her the way it does the others. It does affect a little bit, but because it shows like her cheeks get a little reddened. She does get a little warmer. So it's there, and it does affect her a little bit physically, but she's able to overcome it. She's able to, and I think it's amazing. I made a point about this earlier for the Nazir scene that, I saw someone online say this, and I really think that that's probably true, but this has got to be like, this is the genesis of the little phrase that they repeat in the current Dune timeline. Fear is the mind killer. I will let it wash over me and through me. And so it definitely dealing with this virus and dealing with needing to be mind over matter and get out of the fear, which is something that's so huge. Like that little repeated phrase is so huge in the current Dune timeline. that it's just really interesting to have seen, like, this is where it sort of all began, was this whole, like, fear's the mind killer, and it's true,
Yeah. Yeah, that whole sequence was great. First of all, we like it goes to her, she's like, you've seen my end, Desmond Hart, show it to me. And so then, he puts his hand up to his eyeball and, starts doing the whole, weird face thing, and she starts reacting to it. And we go inside her mind, and she clearly is going to, like, the thing that scared her the most, which is when her brother was drowning. Yeah. Right. And she's out on the ice, and it's like this, like, blizzard, and it's blowing wind, and it's, whipping all up and around. The first thing I love is that he, like, went into a hole that is very similar to the pool. Right. Yeah. It's circular, and that's when she, yells down into there, swim, and we kind of hear it from under the water. And, you talked about how the water of the pool would ripple when she used the voice with Dorothea. You kind of get that same thing with it going, like, almost like the voice is traveling through the water to reach him, and he eventually he swims up to the surface, right, and he comes back. Yep. And then what I thought was cool was that the blowing snow started to turn black. Right. Yeah. And it was very similar to when Nazir was doing the thing with the 3 cubes, and it started out and it was kind of white snow, and then it would turn black, and then it went back to white. And then ultimately when you killed her, it turned all black. Very similar setup. And I got the sense that this is Valia's mind, and it's how is the virus doing? And as the snow started turning blacker, that's when we would cut to her in the real world, and like you said, like, her cheeks were starting to turn a little rosy, and she's starting to get that, like, this is hurting, kind of thing going on, and then it would jump back into her mind, and she's still fighting. And then remember, Griffin is alive, and she's like, I saved you, and then he's like, no, you killed me, you killed us all, and then he dies, and she's like, yeah, and all that. So she's, like, living out this nightmare, and then Tula shows up. Tula finally gets to the planet, and she kind of talks her off the ledge, right? And she says, you can't fight it. You have to let it wash over you. And again, all of the things that are in the fear is the mind killer mantra, she is not saying exactly what we know it as now, but it's all there, right? It's all those ideas of, if you let fear take hold of you, it'll control you. And so the only way to fight it is to not react to it and not let it take hold and let it wash over you. And what is the line of the mantra? When the fear is gone, only I will remain. And Valia manages to beat it and survive. Now, also remember, Desmond has got, like, a massive, stab wound from several scenes earlier, and he kind of like passes out. So it might be a case where, once he went unconscious, he stopped, like, physically trying to kill her, and so, it backed up. But in any case, she did survive. I thought that was a really, really cool scene, the way they visualized it and showed us exactly what was happening and tied back with the Nazir stuff. And then, of course, all of the Dune stuff in there with the mantra. I loved that scene. So I'm right there with you. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. And we get this great, like, the whole end of it. We've got this Desmond and Tula moment, that they have this moment together where it's clear, I'm your mother, and I there's regret there, and it's a wonderful, wonderful scene, and you feel like you're on the edge here. Is it gonna be like, join me, mother? Like, is he gonna be swayed? No, arrest her. So it's like,
but he hugs her, she hugs him, and then he responds, and you kind of get
he didn't respond to the kiss, but he responded to the hug.
Yes, he did, right? And you're right. He has this very like surprised look, like it's almost like I don't know what to do, like I've never felt these kind of weird feelings before. You know what I mean? Didn't you? That's what I got when his reaction. But he does hug her, and you're kind of like, oh, well, what does this mean? And then after like a second or two, that's when he pulls away and he goes, arrest her, and so she's going into the clink. But yeah, it's a weird, like a satisfying moment for Tula, but a weird one at the same time, just because of the way Desmond reacts to it. And so, clearly it didn't, like, he hasn't resolved all of his anger towards his mom based on that one hug, but maybe it's a start. Maybe they can find something, and maybe if she explains, look, did you really want me to raise you with her? That maybe that will win some points with him. But the other thing too, we kind of jumped over is that as Valia is calming down and letting the fear wash over her, she like has some weird connection to Desmond, and we finally get the answer to what is the crazy eyeballs, the glowing eyes that all of these people have been dreaming of. So why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, do it. Go for it, man.
No, I want you to.
I would, but I didn't put the notes down, and I don't remember the scene very well. So you'll have to talk about it.
Well, we cut to she like the wintry place on the ice like slowly turns into Arrakis.
Okay.
And the blowing snow becomes blowing sand, and suddenly she is right where we've always seen Desmond, where the worm is like approaching and is gonna swallow her. And
right.
It comes up, and just as it's coming down, it turns, everything goes dark, and then we get the two glowing eyes, and we hear that weird voice, and we still can't understand what it is, and the stupid closed captioning still won't tell us. And and then the eyes, they like merge into one, and we realize that it's a light, and it's a light that's on like a little mechanical arm, and it literally reaches right towards the screen, and we kind of realize very quickly that it's basically Desmond is like on like a medical operating table, and a thinking machine type instrument is literally pulling one of his eyeballs out of his skull.
Oh, gross.
Oh yeah, and so it pulls it back, and literally you see the nerve cord that is attached to the back of your eye, and the eyeball's got to be maybe about 6 or 8 inches away from his face, and then another little mechanical arm comes up and starts like implanting like little nanite thinking machines to the nerve cluster of his eye.
Yeah.
And it does, and you see them, and they're glowing and all this stuff, and then it like sticks it back into his head. And then the very last thing it does is it goes up to like his pupil or his iris, and it shoots like a little laser and like cuts something or does something to the outside of his eye. And of course she's watching all this. It's like she's experiencing it, and so she's telling Tula what she sees. And there's some like kind of hidden figure, we just sort of see their silhouette way in the background, that's like by a control panel, that's clearly either watching this happen or actually operating the machinery to make it happen. And Tula's like, who is it? And she's like, I can't make out a face, but it's someone that's doing this to him. And that's when they figure out it's his eye. His eye is what is the catalyst for all of the death that he can inflict. And I think it's at that point that Valia's like, if we cut out his eye, that'll end it. He won't be able to do it. And that's when Tula goes, no, you can't. He's my son.
Yeah.
And Valia's like, no, your son died. And she's like, no, that's not exactly true. And they kind of have this little moment, and Valia's like, you don't trust me at all. And Tula then says, yeah, I don't. And that's because we're the same, you and I. Two wolves born to feed with no cares for the cost. And I thought that was a real cool line too. And so then basically Valia gets up and makes her getaway, and Tula is like, well, I'll stay with Desmond because, he's my baby boy and I owe him 30 years of allowance and so many birthday cards and all that stuff. And
right.
And so then basically that they separate and that's it. But we get this kind of crazy reveal about what happened to him. And so everything about the worm, it's got to be like an implanted memory.
Yeah.
That, whoever did this to him has put in there to cover up what actually happened.
So that he doesn't remember the actual moment of implantation. So do you think we'll ever know? Like, do you think that'll be season 2 is finding out who was the and we have an answer on like sort of what the eyes were, because if you think about like when you focus on something, you can see like sometimes you get the double vision and then things come together. So that makes sense. Yeah. But I'm wondering if we'll ever hear the voice. Like what are the words? What are they saying?
Yeah,
that'd be interesting.
I could definitely see in season 2, like maybe Tula will be talking with Desmond, and maybe they will, let's go back to that memory, and she'll help him kind of break through that conditioning and allow him. And so maybe like it'll be a thing where during season 2, it'll slowly start coming into focus as to what was said, and more importantly, who that person is that's doing it. Because clearly that's the person that wants to mess with the Imperium and causing all the strife on Arrakis and everything. That's my guess anyway. Do
you have any guesses to who you think is who's the machinations behind the whole thing?
No, I really don't, and that's just because I have not read the books at all, so I don't know what other houses they're going to talk about or other characters that are going to come into. I honestly, I don't know. I'm very tempted to go read the book now.
I know, but I don't want anything revealed.
Right, the same thing. I don't want to know. I want to just discover it on the show. So I'm guessing my plan is going to be when the show has run its course, then I'll read the book.
Yeah. I've done that with other shows too, where you're like, I want to wait because I don't want anything to be revealed, and then agreed. I think too, like if you approach it from who has the most to gain by him creating like this chaos, Desmond going in there and think if everything had gone the way he wanted it to. He wanted the Emperor to stay in charge. He wanted the Emperor to be an ally, to help remove the sisterhood, etc. And if all of those things had sort of happened the way he wanted to, like, I guess that's the answer to the question is who would benefit the most out of that? The sisterhood going away, and is it the sisterhood or is it directly getting rid of the Harkonnen sisters? So is it an Atreides thing? Is it part of the rebel thing?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And also, is it the thinking machines?
Right. Have they just risen up? Because that's what they fought against was
right. Yeah.
They got too much power.
Yeah, and maybe like some of them survived, or somebody went and rebuilt them, because clearly they still exist, right? We've seen little bits of them here and there, and maybe some world somewhere they've recreated Skynet, and he's building Arnie's left and right to send back in time. We don't know. I mean, it could be any one of those things. I mean, that's what's just so delicious about it for me, is that I don't know, because I've never read this, so I just gonna watch it happen and enjoy it. So
I know, I love it. I love that whole part of it. Is there anything else that you think we just sort of like jumped over? Because this, like you said, in the episode itself, like there was a lot of ping ponging. First we're in the past, then we're in the present. We're going back and forth between Salusa Secundus. We're at the we're at
Palace
Yeah, exactly. We're back and forth, with all of these things, stories, time jumping all over the place. So much damn death.
Oh man, yeah.
And it's just like,
and Mark Strong's gone, and I love Mark
yeah,
Strong, and yeah, it's the only thing I would say is that there's a moment there where the Emperor basically tells his wife that he's gonna like send her on this like goodwill tour,
which is basically a nice way of getting your wife out of the house so that you can be with your lover.
Exactly, right. And then basically he's like, well, you wanted to like more of a voice and control or ruling the Imperium. Here you go. And with your contacts, it'll be great. And she's just like, she knows immediately. She's like, screw you, not going to happen. And so then the next scene, she's there with Desmond, and basically she tells the Emperor, no. You're still going to be the king. You're going to have the crown. You're going to do all the official stuff. But every decision that happens from now on is mine, and basically he's a puppet, right? And he has no say at all. And that's what leads him back to Valia, where he's like, he tells her, he's like, Natalia wants to use me as a puppet. And that's when Valia says, you've always been a puppet.
Yeah.
So yeah. And we did, again, there's so much happened in this episode. We did kind of jump over that, but that I thought was a fun little moment. And when Desmond is standing with Natalia, and Haviko is like, but you swore you'd only serve me, and he's like, you made your choice.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What about you? Anything we forgot?
Yeah, I included at the end there that like one of our last moments we got before the episode was over was confirmation that Kieran, Inez, and Valia do make it to Arrakis.
Yes.
So that will probably be where the story unfolds next season. So we'll actually be on Arrakis, plus have all these other things going on on the Imperial planet and all this other stuff. So I just think it's interesting when you look at that mixture of people. Inez really, really wanted to still work with the Sisterhood. Well, guess what, sister? You're going to be like right there with the Sisterhood. And
but I mean, I don't officially, I have a feeling that Valia is no longer the Mother Superior. So
yeah, that's true. But she still has all the powers. She still is who she is. So I'm just curious what that mixture will be. And also, Inez and Kieran have like history, so that'll be, tense. But also, I'm curious to see what Kieran's like, if who Desmond is comes out, and obviously people all across, the universe, if they all find out who he is, where he came from.
Yeah, he's Harkonnen.
Yeah, he's
part Harkonnen, but he's part Atreides too.
But he's part Atreides, and he is basically like, he's also the product of that like massacre that happened of the Atreides. So I'm just curious if like Kieran gets any of that information and what he'll do with it. And so for the three of them to be together on Arrakis is just an interesting, it's just going to be an interesting sort of mixture of, people and their pasts, and, if secrets come out, etc. Like it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, we'll probably get that one. The bartender. She went to Arrakis too, so hopefully she will be back for season 2. So yeah.
And she was not happy with Valia, so that'll be an interesting. I wonder if there'll be some Valia like comeuppance moments in
some
season
fallout,
2,
perhaps. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. I think I covered all of my stuff, and I know you jumped in with something that we missed a year, so I think we did it. We covered it.
You know what? It was a very, very fast 6 weeks.
It was, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, and what's funny is we started out with the double episode. So we've really only been talking about the show for 5 weeks, even though it's been on for 6. So it's even tighter for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it just, I mean, in terms of watching it, because again, they're only dropping them 1 episode a week, so it's not a binge kind of a thing. It still went by very quickly.
It sure did. It really did. And it's one of those things where that instant gratification, we're so used to being able to stream and see whatever we want, and we're likely going to have to wait at least a year, and most likely probably a bit longer, to get a season 2 out of this. And I'm here for it. I'm very excited for it. But me too. Nope. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and discuss some listener feedback. We're also going to talk a little bit about our thoughts and feelings about what we're looking for in season 2, talk a little bit about what's coming up next on the podcast.
So everyone, please stick around. We'll be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a weekly podcast covering the hit AMC programs The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the latest episodes. Aim for the Head, available on iTunes. You can also follow them on Facebook.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Welcome back, everybody. We are going to jump into our feedback we received. We're going to talk a little bit more about the episode. We're going to talk about our thoughts for season 2, and then get into what's coming up next on the podcast. But first off, let's jump right into our feedback. Our mountains and mountains of feedback that we received. I'm just kidding. We only got feedback from one person. And it's, at least, let's put it this way. It's like, you know, consistent. Erica has been watching the damn shit out of this show. And she is telling us what she thinks. And Erica, we love you. Thanks.
We do.
Thanks so much.
It's so great.
Yeah. And I know it's tough because sometimes when we're covering stuff that's not like, you know, we started off as a Walking Dead podcast. We've branched out and covered other media that, you know, is horror / science fiction / apocalyptic adjacent. And, you know, not everybody, it's their cup of tea. So we don't always get tons of feedback when we cover stuff that's non-Walking Dead related. So, Erica, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We appreciate it, and you were clearly enjoying yourself because you've sent in some really great feedback and questions. So we thank you. We appreciate you. So Erica wrote in via the Facebook, and she says, "Are the voices in Tula and Valia's heads from their other memories?" And she used capital letters there. Let me tell you, Erica, I did a little bit of a deep dive today, a little rabbit hole Bene Gesserit action. And that is correct. The memories is part of when they do the agony, and those kind of like how we saw Lila go through it and she's kind of stuck there. When they go through the agony, then they have access to all of those memories of everyone from, you know, generations ago. So if you survive the agony, you know, once you go through all of that, you'll also get all of this valuable information, you know, sort of at your fingertips, at the ready. And they apparently they talk to you all the time. What were you going to say?
Is it similar, you think, to when Jessica drinks the water of life and
yes.
and
yes.
has that kind of thing?
They actually talk about that in the research I did, that the ceremony that the Sisterhood does is very similar to the one that they do on Arrakis with the Fremen. And it's very, very similar, that it's all about having access to a deeper trove of memories and etc. So it's almost the same ceremony, except they use a little bit of a different substance for each one. So just so you know.
Cool.
All right, so there you go. And if you want to, you can just go to the Wikipedia page and go down that rabbit hole if you'd like to. So she continues on, and Erica says, "I'm sad Nazir had to sacrifice herself. I sure hope it was worth it." Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, not for her, but
yeah. The virus took her down so fast. She really did. It was a brutal scene, but it was also, it moved so fast. It's not even so much that it was fast, but it was when it turned and you knew that it was bad, because it felt like she was gaining. And it felt like, oh, this is going well, and then it wasn't.
and you're right. And once it turned, it was like, know, there was no chance after that. It's like,
that was the end of that. Which was sad. And yes, quick. So Valia's near-death scene was so cool. I'm glad she survived. Maybe someday she'll be thankful for Tula's help. I wouldn't hold your breath there, Erica,
don't think so.
Instead, she leaves her to her own devices on Salusa Secundus to face Natalia. That's not going to be fun. I didn't even think about that wrinkle, because she's not she's right there on the planet with Desmond, and he takes her into custody. Yeah, she's going to be tortured by the Empress.
But, she does have Theodosia with her, because she got taken into custody, too.
Yeah, that's true. And she can be whoever she wants to be. So I think that's going to be a real interesting sort of wrinkle there. Love it. Okay, because she continues and says, so much happened in this episode. Amen, sister. So many dead and displaced. No kidding. Dorothea appears to be in full control of Lila. Yes. Will Sister Avila and Sister Jen be able to stop her? I don't know. All in all, I've really enjoyed this season, and I hope we get a season 2. Well, you are in luck. We already talked about it, but yes, they did announce just a couple of days before the season finale premiered that they are definitely doing the season 2, which we talked about in the first half there. But we're excited too. About Sister Avila and Jen being able to stop her. I'm curious if Jen not having the dream, it means she's not infected, right? Is that what we're supposed to surmise from everything?
I would guess so. Yeah. And we don't really know her, what is her makeup, her upbringing, her, ancestry, whatever, that made her that she's immune, or what. Again, we don't really know. But I would definitely surmise that because she has not had the nightmare, she has some sort of immunity to the virus.
Agreed. Yeah. So maybe that will help. I'm not sure about Sister Avila.
Yeah.
But that may give Jen a little bit of an upper hand in helping combat whatever it is they're going to have to combat in the second season. So
my question would be, do we think that Avila and Jen are going to want to try and stop Dorothea, or are they just going to join Dorothea's team?
I don't know. I don't know that Jen is that devout. Avila, yes.
Yeah. Well, Avila, she's a survivor, so she's, you're back in power, I'm on your team.
That's it. Yeah,
but you're right.
I'm on the winning team, no matter.
That's
who
what
it
she.
is.
Yeah, she totally is. Yeah, she's Italy, basically. It's Jen is kind of a wild card here in that she doesn't seem to be the most pious, and so on. So, is she going to remain loyal to Avalia and Tula, or is she going to, go, well, this is the new reality and it's now, Sister Lila / Dorothea, or is she going to be like, well, I'm not really for anybody, but if I were to pick a side, I want Lila back.
Yeah, she might, because she had such a connection to Lila, like a surprising one. Because didn't we talked about that, where it was surprising that Jen seemed to like tease her and not be connected, but then when she started going through the agony, she was so like emotionally connected to her. So
and very angry
that'd be interesting.
with Valia and Tula for making her do it, and very
putting her
absolutely
through all of that.
Yeah. So again, maybe that's going to be her motivation is, look, I'm not on anybody's team. I just want to get all of these voices out of Lila's head and get Lila back because I miss her. Yeah, we'll set to see.
We will. Let's do a little bit. Thank you, Erica, for writing in. I know I sort of got all sloppy in the beginning with you, but yes, thank you for writing in, being consistent every week. We look forward to it. You get great questions, great insights, and like you, we are also looking forward to season 2.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So speaking of season 2, I jotted down a couple of questions that I have for season 2. Some things that I think are not so much that they haven't been resolved. Some of them haven't, but mostly like, will this factor in? And my number one that I keep thinking of is, do we think Inez is pregnant?
My first thought would be no.
Because why would they go through the trouble of showing that she had sex with Kieran? She could have just been like fooling around with him, kissing, cuddling, whatever, but they full on had sex. And I'm sure it's not the first time. And we do know that the Atreides seed is strong.
Okay, disgusting, but okay. No, I did not get that sense. I just think that she clearly, is really likes him, and
I really, really like you.
I do. She really, really likes him, so much so that she gets all nasty with him. But when he was arrested and she came in and kind of did the truth sayer thing on him and asked him, was it all a sham? And he said no, and told her, that he had feelings for her. I think that just made her, want him all that much more, because she can fix him. Because, that's what girls do to boys. So.
Yeah, she's going to make him, she's going to improve him, change him, make him better.
That's right, because that's what
ladies,
happens.
That never works. That never works, ladies.
No, it works all the time. What are you talking about?
Nope. Nope, it never works. Okay, so I think it's possible, because I think a pregnancy that's Valia's, like, that's her bread and butter, is dealing with, like, pregnancies and getting people to, like, have the baby she wants them to have. So
yeah, but that's not part of the plan, though, right? Don't you think she would have had?
But that happens all the time. Like, that's Paul wasn't part of the plan. So I think that would be an interesting comeuppance for Valia too. If there was an unplanned pregnancy, that would totally throw a wrench in all of her works.
Maybe she already has one of those with Desmond.
Yeah, I know. But still, anyway.
The only thing I would say is that I cannot remember her name. The sister that was the Emperor's truthsayer who died.
Oh, Kasha.
Kasha. Kasha and Inez were very close, right? That was part of the plan. Don't you think that she would be constantly telling Inez, there are ways to make sure that you don't get all knocked up, and you really want to make sure you do that? And I'm not saying that no, don't go out and have a good time, but let's be smart about this. You want things you want to do with your life, and the last thing you want is some kid chaining you to home, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. That's possible. All right.
Yeah.
I still think it's possible, but I understand.
Absolutely.
I understand his perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. They absolutely could go that route. I kind of, just from a viewer response, I hope not, because when you make a character in a show pregnant, and again, I mean, if she's pregnant in real life, then they got no choice. But it just, like, making it like a story thing, I never like that, because invariably that character then gets sidelined. You know what I mean? Just like, oh, well, now I have a baby to take care of. Oh, okay. Yeah. So
I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay. Well, we will see.
We have to see.
My next up thing that I was curious about is, when we last see Lila, she is very entrenched in being Dorothea. Do you think that Raquella will ever come to the forefront again? Or does Dorothea just have too deep of a hold on her?
Yeah, that's a good question. Are they is that character now that's just Dorothea all the time, or will we see kind of this multiple personality? We don't know, Lila is constantly changing kind of a thing. I don't know. It certainly seems like Dorothea is in full control, right?
Yeah, it does.
But I think it would make the character that much more interesting, where there might be moments where Lila comes back, or there might be moments where it's Raquel or whatever. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that the struggle for who will, and maybe it's Lila. Maybe Lila perseveres and she comes to the top. I think that the struggle between Lila, Dorothea, and Raquella, as well as other, people in her past, I think that struggle will play out in season 2. Like, we'll find out who will be the stronger one and who will come through. Just because I think, Raquella would be very interested to see, like, the things that have happened. I mean, you have to admit, she must have some way of knowing that Dorothea demolished Anna Rule. So that was her life's work. So I'd be curious to see if that helps Raquella sort of maybe rise up and push Dorothea out of the way, or who knows. But like you were saying about Jen as well, like maybe Jen will help, based off of what Erica was saying, like maybe Jen will assist with trying to get Lila be the one who is the strong one. Who is the dominant one, as it were. So,
Good. It's going to be fun to watch.
Question. All right, now let's talk about Desmond a little. So Desmond is, for the time being, on the Imperial planet, the Seleucus Secundus, with the Empress, with his prisoner of Tula and Theodosia. But do you think Desmond's going to stick around? Do you think he ends up back on Arrakis at all?
Wow, it's a hard question to answer, because clearly I could see him going after Valia and having a lot of next season set there. But I think the fact that Arrakis has been present in this series, but not overly present. We talk about it. It's there. The spice is a thing. The worms are a thing. Fremen, all that stuff. But we're not there. We're not on there. And I think there's maybe a little bit of the producers of this show are like, we don't want to just like try and do the movie on TV.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
And so because of that mentality, like the stay on Arrakis might be very brief for our rebels, and they might go somewhere else. But I think there's enough stuff going on in the palace for Desmond to do with the Empress that my gut feeling right now is if he goes to Arrakis, or if we're on Arrakis a lot, it's not going to be a lot. It's going to be maybe an episode or two, and then we're gone. What do you think?
It depends. I hadn't even thought about the Michaela portion, she was the bartender, who lost all of her stuff. Like, if she goes back and she gets, she's rooted back in with the Fremen, like, will that be part of it as well? Like, will the Fremen have some kind of, like, storyline as well? Like, will we see them become part of that? I think if there's any intention of making the Fremen part of it, then yes, we'll spend some time on Arrakis. But otherwise, you may be right. It may just be a brief, a little bit of time here, and then going back to the places that are that have been made new, because we were talking about that. You make a good point about that, because about the producers not wanting this to be just like, everything we know about the movie. Because we talked about the fact that it was great that there were all of these new places that we didn't know about, the Harkonnen's home and Salusa Secundus. We'd never been on there before, and all these other things. It's just like, so do you want to keep that freshness? So maybe you're right. Maybe the staying on Arrakis is not going to be a thing. Plus, it's really hard to do all of that sand for filming. For a TV show.
Yes, it's just, and sand gets everywhere. So,
I mean, you can never get it out of like your butt crack. It's always there.
It's just and I could see Emily Watson going, I don't think you're paying me enough for butt crack sand, so no.
Yeah, I'm not getting enough money for filming in the sand for the next like X amount of like
exactly
years.
Yeah,
I get it. So yeah, it remains to be seen for sure. My last question though, we gotta get an answer to this. What the hell is the voice saying?
That's what he says.
And yeah, but like words. What's the words that they say? Because
afraid of
they're
worms,
killing me.
Roxanne. Worms.
Worms.
Like I said when we were talking about the episode, my thought that I have is that I could see Tula and Desmond, working on ways to unlock that memory, and so. Just like the idea that jumped into my head would be like in the 6 episodes for season 2, each episode or every couple of episodes, they will work on that memory and it'll become a little bit clearer each time. And so from the beginning of season 2, episode 1 to season 2, episode 6, it'll end up that we'll know exactly what's being said and we'll know who that person is in the background, and that'll be the end of season 2, which will then set up season 3, where they now can confront said person. So again,
I like that.
Just picking it out of the air. I have nothing to support that. That's just like, I could see them doing that. But what do you think? Do you think that that's going to be a MacGuffin, or do you think they'll actually answer that question?
They have to answer that question. They can't, because if it was a MacGuffin, they would have just been like, it just would have been like inaudible voice on the what's it called?
On the closed captioning.
Closed captioning. Muffled voice, inaudible voice.
Yeah.
But every time it's like they can't understand what they're saying. Like they're making a point of telling you that it's indistinguishable. You can't understand what's being said. And that would also probably answer a lot of questions about these visions they're having. So yeah, they better. If they don't, oh my God.
How can the closed captioning tell us what it says when it's busy letting us know that unsettling music is playing?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're very busy telling us about the unsettling music. They can only do so much at each time. So I get it.
It's limited closed captioning.
Yeah. That's all I had written down. You have anything that you wanted to discuss before we move on?
Just general. I mean, I'm hoping that we get more into the formation of the Harkonnen clan and the Atreides clan, and we start seeing some of the framework of, how does the Harkonnen clan get Arrakis? Right.
Yeah.
When we're told that they've been there in the Dune movies. We're told that they've been in control of it for a long time.
Yeah.
Not 10,000 years, but certainly a long time. So how does that, like, when does the emperor or the empress in this case decide that it's not the Imperial House that's going to control Arrakis, but that one of the Landsraad's going to get it, right? And what do the Harkonnens have to do to win that, right? Because clearly that's the moneymaker, right? They talk about all the money that the Harkonnens have. They have like more money than the Emperor in Dune Part 1.
Yeah.
So I would like to see that. I would like to see more of the groundwork laid for what we know the movies will eventually have happen. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I hope so too. I really do. All right. So coming up next on the podcast, we just can't say goodbye to this world just yet, but we are going to jump ahead 10,000 years. So on the next podcast, we are finally going to take some time to sit and talk about our thoughts about the sequel to Dune, the Dune Part 2 that was released this past summer. We're very excited about this. It's one of those ones that we've been meaning to cover. We saw it so long ago at this point. And, obviously when we covered the first one, and that was quite some months ago, it was before this actually even came out. We watched it because we covered it because we were so all excited about Part 2.
Yes.
So we've been discussing it for months and months to talk about it, but we've had other things and we've just sort of been pushing it aside. And now we just, with a little slight opening after the end of covering this new series, and we're still in the land of Dune, it just made a lot of sense. So that's what we're going to do, people.
That's right. Dune 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Pretty sure it's still streaming. It's still on HBO. So if you have HBO or if you have access to Max, you have the ability, crank out 30 minutes of it tonight, get some of it and jot some thoughts down on Part 2 and how you feel about it. It's been a bit since I revisited. I did watch it again, but it was right after it got right on HBO, and I haven't since then. But I plan on watching it probably twice this coming week to just, really get a nice base to have this conversation. I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
So this is what we're going to talk about in the first half of the episode. We are also, because this year is coming to a close, we wanted to, never really done sort of a year in review, but I think we're going to, talk about what were our, highlights this year, favorite podcast episodes, favorite, things that we covered for you guys. So, favorite shows, favorite movies, blah, blah, blah. So look for that this coming week as well. We'll have some social media posts. And please, give us your feedback as well. What were some of your favorite episodes that we covered this year? What's a TV show or a series or a movie that we covered that was your favorite thing that we did this year? So take a peek at the archives, remind yourself of what we did this year and let us know what you thought. And then outside of the podcast, what were your favorite series or movies this year? And let us know about it, because we're going to discuss all of it when we convene next week. So that's for this year. We're going to be, we're wrapping up 2024, and I'm starting a list of things I'm excited for 2025. We're going to get Dead City, Last of Us is coming back, which I'm very excited for. Handmaid's Tale is going to have its next season, which will be the final season. They just wrapped.
Wait, isn't that just going to be like Everyday Life?
You're so funny. Shut up. It is not. Then they wrapped filming. I think I saw it on Twitter. I think it's about a week ago, or within this past week, they wrapped Stranger Things. So we should probably see Stranger Things, and it's their final season as well. And that should be coming within this coming year as well. At some point. At some point in 2026. And
2025.
2025, that's right. And we should see more Daryl this year as well. Probably later in the year, I would say fall or whatever. Mm-hmm. But they were already filming season 3 when we were watching season 2.
Right.
So they had already gotten started on their their path there. So we've got a really good shot of getting some episodes before the close of 2025, I'm thinking. So it's pretty exciting stuff. That's a lot of good TV that's coming out. Plus, you know, all the stuff you don't expect, and you're like, oh, let's cover that. Let's talk about that. Yeah, so pretty exciting stuff. I gotta say, if you're looking for something to binge right now, people, I gotta throw a recommendation out there. Over the holidays, when I probably should have binged stuff that I could cover for the podcast, I was like, no, I want to watch something for me. So I binged all of the episodes for the new series that's on Prime called Cross. And it's a new series about the character Alex Cross, who's played by Morgan Freeman in Kiss the Girls and Along Came the Spider. There was also another series or movie where Tyler Perry was in that, but that did not do well
It's a couple of movies that Tyler Perry played him, yeah.
And so they that was not too long ago, but then they resurrected the character, and they've got this great series, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. I think Tyler Perry produces it, right?
I can take a look and see. I don't recall.
I want to say that he bought the rights to that to the character of Alex Cross.
James Patterson was so excited about this version, though. He was over the moon, and I gotta say, it's fantastic.
Okay,
it's
cool.
Really, really good. Highly recommended. I really enjoyed it, and I'm curious to see what other people's thoughts are, because I've got some things that I really enjoyed about it. Some they did things a little differently than you would expect from a crime thing, and I'm curious to see what other people think of it. So, but I don't want to give anything away by talking about it.
Right.
Yeah, very recommended. Loved it. I went right through it really fast. I was like, basically like, it's Christmas. I understand, but get the hell out of my house so I can finish watching this, please. Basically. Merry Christmas. So, I think that's it though. I don't think we got anything else to chat about. You got anything you got to add?
Just for 2025, the thing I'm excited for is they've started announcing guests for Flashback Weekend, and it's going to be a Reanimator show because Barbara Crampton and Jeff Combs have already been announced as guests, and so I'm over the moon to meet both of them, but particularly Barbara Crampton. It's amazing. It's going to be great.
I know you're so excited. We did make it. I don't know if we made a pact, but I know I'm emotionally made a pact that I don't think I'm going to go to Fan Expo this year. It was too big, too much, it was not enjoyable. I did not have a fun time. There was some fun things there, but overall it was too many things, and I think I need a year off to sort of whatever.
Yeah, you say that now, but just wait till the guests start getting announced.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. They had some fantastic guests this past year, but they were so like out of your reach, like money wise. And then the other people, there was some logistical issues and stuff like that. So yes, I do hold off and we'll see what we'll see. But I sort of am planning on putting all my eggs in the C2E2 basket. And they already started announcing some guests, and John Boyega from the most current Star Wars movies is going to be there. And I think that's fantastic. He's a great actor, and I think he'd be fun to meet. I'm not sure if he'd be in my price range, but we don't know yet. But that's a really great, announcement to start off with. So I'm always excited for C2E2, but I'm glad when they can build a show around a couple of good guests. So it looks like they're getting started. So I'm looking forward to that. And
again, this is Flashback Weekend. It's not C2E2, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, the Flashback Weekend is going to be great. The Reanimator stuff is going to be so fun. Yay! All right, so that's going to do it for us this week, folks. We look forward to chatting with you next week. Please come back and listen in if you get a chance. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
The fantasy is over.
Yeah.
You're just stuck with me now.
You've never heard that before.
Never. It's not the title of my sex tape.